Hello everybody, today I'm going to be talking about Vessel of Hatred and all of the awesome companion druid changes that are going to be coming. So, the cool thing about this is that I actually am no longer going to start Spiritborn because yet again they gave even more companion druid support, which I really wasn't expecting. So I kind of want to play companion druid first before I move on to Spiritborn in Vessel of Hatred. But first thing I'm going to show you guys is this new Mythic Unique. This one is pretty cool, not necessarily for wolves, but for poison creepers. So, execute enemies afflicted by more damage over time than remaining life. This also gives us access to Berserk, which is very interesting, which gives us access to an interesting rune word. If you don't know what rune words are, I'll go over those in a second. But you'll notice here it says 29.6% attack speed while berserking. Well, in Vessel of Hatred, they are going to be, I guess, experimenting with rune words and stuff like that, giving other classes the abilities of other classes, right? So real quick, to really understand this, I probably should go up here real fast, and we're just gonna hop into the rune words. Where are they at? This right here. Okay. So essentially, you have these two different types of rune words. You have a rune of ritual and a rune of invocation. The rune of ritual is a way for you to generate offering. Once you have enough offering, then you can use the rune of invocation. So offering essentially is the resource it takes in order for your rune word to activate. So notice how it says on Ya or Ja, whatever that is, 500 offering. All right, you come up here and it says after traveling 50 or 5 meters, you gain 50 offering. Once you hit 500 offering, your next evade will be teleport. Okay. So now I'm going to show you guys these because they're very cool. And there's also some interesting companion druid ones in here as well to be going over. And then I'll cross back over into that mythic item. So first off, we have this. This is a ritual rune. Gain 50 offering. Cast a skill with a cooldown. We know that we reset like mad with companion druid, with pack leader. So we are spamming our cooldowns all the time. So this right here is automatically going to end up being a top tier rune word for companion druid. The next one that's very interesting to me is your minion or companion kills an enemy or dies. You're only going to be able to use 2 sets of rune words, meaning you'll be able to have 2 effects, okay? And you have to use it in a 2-slot item, so chances are, if I had to guess, currently in the way things are, most people are going to put a rune word in their weapon, and then they'll put a rune word in their legs, because most people are most likely not going to want to lose that max life, and losing a little bit of additive damage from your weapon really is not a big deal, but it does have to be a 2-slot thing specifically. So if you're doing like a one-hand and a one-hand, or like a one-hand and an offhand, I believe you'll have to put it on your pants and your chest piece. All right, but you see here, your minion or companion kills an enemy or dies. That one is pretty interesting. Even the travel 5 meters one is pretty interesting if you're doing some type of speed farming build. Evoke a power from another class. This one is also interesting. When you have that mythic unique, you will be evoking Berserk, which is not something your class would normally have. So I'm assuming that it will now, obviously in the PTR next week that is coming out, I'll be able to test this, but you know, we'll be able to see, hey, does this actually interact with that? Because if it does, it'll be very, very interesting for a poison creeper build to be using that item, just because of that nice execute whenever you deal more dots damage than their life. But anyways, then you see here you have just cast evade. That gets you 50 offering. Travel 5 meters. Drinking a healing potion gives you 100 offering. Spend 5% of your max resource gives you 2 offering. You know, like there's a bunch of these, but overall I like the minion companion dies, I like the cooldown one, and then I like the evoke one. Another one, I believe, and then there's one here, cast a non-channeled core skill. That one could potentially be interesting, just because we will most likely still continue to use pulverize and do a quick shift build, but I'll get into that in a bit. So this one also could potentially be interesting if we're constantly pressing pulverize and stuff like that. So we have quite a few options, and another cool thing is this one actually is on the table as well to use, because ult CDR is going to be very, very high in Vessel of Hatred, and we'll actually have spots for an ultimate. So I know you might be asking why, how. Well, don't worry, I will show you. So now coming down here, invocation runes real fast. So there's some pretty interesting ones. And the ones that I personally think are going to be the best are obviously going to be the ones that give people 2 things: multiplicative damage and movement speed. So you can see here for 500 offering, we can invoke a Barbarian's Warcry, increasing our movement speed and damage dealt for 500 offering. I personally think that a lot of these offerings are going to get lowered on these higher ones, but at the same time, I don't think some of these aren't going to get much lower, just because, you know, obviously you don't want to, what's the word? You don't want to like make it to where, you know, people can be like invoking these all the time. But evoke the Barbarian's Enhanced Warcry, increasing your movement speed and damage dealt. So Enhanced Warcry gives you up to 50% extra damage, I think, because it's like 15 and then it's 10% for each additional enemy, I think, that's around you. So like you can get a lot of that. On top of the fact it increases your movement speed, this is going to be very good, I think, for most classes. You have things like this, gain 3+3 to all skills. This isn't really that relevant, and that's why when I get into the new companion legendary node that they actually ended up making, once you start having a ton of ranks to a skill, adding one more rank to it, you get kind of a diminishing return. So a good example is currently in the game, I actually have like 30 ranks to my wolves, and I did the math, and if I was to add 3 more ranks, I'm actually only getting like a 9% increase to my damage, as opposed to, or sorry, if I use like, you know, the 8 ranked helm and I was to take it off, I'm actually only losing like roughly maybe 15 to 20% damage, whereas if it was like lower, I would be gaining like, you know, 30-40% damage from it, right, if I was only gaining a little bit of rank. So this one is kind of a bait. I think for other classes it'll be good, but I think for companion druid it's not going to be as good, but we'll see. This one here is also interesting because it gives us crit. I do not think we're going to end up using this one, just because you have access to shifter and stuff like that to gain crit, so you can make sure that you're critting all the time. But we'll see. Your next skill cast, guaranteed crit overpower. This is the next one. I think this is going to be good. I would say the best ones to use before testing anything, obviously, is this one and then this one. And the reason for this is because I know it's weird to evoke a Druid's Earthen Bulwark, right, and to grant ourselves a barrier. People will be like, well, you can already just do that. Well, the fact that you don't have to use up a skill slot here, and you can just automatically have it going off, and you can automatically be getting unstoppable, because since you are a Druid, you should be able to get the unstoppable portion of this with that by putting the point into it, but just not having it on your bar. So I think this will be a really good way for us to get unstoppable. Now, do keep in mind, we will have more skill slots open regardless, so we could potentially still just use Earthen Bulwark, but it's just quite interesting. All right, so evoke the Druid's Petrify. That one's kind of interesting. It's interesting that it's only 500 offering. It does have a 5-second cooldown before it can proc again, but that one's also pretty interesting. Reduce active cooldowns is kind of irrelevant. Gain primary resource. 20% max life could be good for certain classes. This one's good if you're running like the Cataclysm Ring. You can get like 100% increased damage by spending all of your primary resource. So that's kind of interesting too, how that's going to interact together. And then where's the other one? There's one more down here that I don't know how good it's going to be, but it'll be broken if this counts as a companion. So it says summon a spirit wolf to attack enemies for 8 seconds, and you can summon multiple wolves. If this counts as like a wolf, or if it counts as a companion, this 100% is going to be what we use, just because it would give us so much damage, and like it would just be nuts, right? So, but we'll see. I don't expect this to be considered a companion. I think this is just a general one that's just supposed to be cool that all people can use. But if it does turn out to be a companion, holy smokes, my gosh, because it says summon multiple wolves, cooldown 1 second, and it's only 100 offerings, so you could easily get like 3 or 4 wolves out all the time. Because like I said, we're going to be pressing our cooldowns all the time, so who knows how many wolves that we could actually get out. And if they do count as companions, they'll increase our shepherd's damage, which would be absolutely nuts. Okay, so that's the Rune Words. So now we can kind of go back down here to the patch notes. All right, so circling back to this Mythic Unique Polearm that I was talking about, it says execute enemies afflicted by more damage over time than remaining life. So this is good because it gives us a way to where if we were to be trying to do a speed run thing where we're trying to use Poison Creeper, get their max life and poison, and then run away, this is going to automatically execute them. It also gives you access to Berserking, so this just gives you a flat 25% multiplicative damage bonus as well for using it. So that's pretty cool. It also would technically be evoking a power from another class, so I do believe it would work with that rune word. If not, the war cry would still, obviously evoke a power from another class anyway. But moving right along, the next change they made is going to be, hold on, let's go to Druid. There we go. So the new core skill is kind of irrelevant to us, doesn't do anything. But they gave us an actual capstone key passive. Your companion skills each gain 1 additional companion and deal 50% increased damage. Gain the passive effect of Ravens, Wolves, and Poison Creeper. They have nerfed Bestial Rampage, so Bestial Rampage only does like 30% damage and then 20% attack speed. I think they kind of learned their lesson. There was too many builds that were running that and it was a little too effective. But for companions, we did not get nerfed. This is absolutely insane because not only is this just like a honestly, I think it's actually comes out to be a slight damage buff because since we get 1 additional companion, we're getting an extra 45% damage out of this, and we get 50 here. But then we always gain the passive effect of Ravens, Wolves, and Poison Creeper, and we also don't know what Wild Rage aspect is going to be changed to. Currently, it says your companions gain double the bonus from the Bestial Rampage key passive. If they change it to where it says your companions gain double the bonus from the One with Nature key passive, that means we'll be getting 2 additional companions, which means, well, and we'd also be getting, like, so we'd pretty much just be doubling this. Like, it'd go from 95 to, like, a 180% damage increase for our companions. So that's going to be pretty interesting if they end up doing that. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. And honestly, I'm not actually, if they don't do that, I'm not mad because right now, this is a net, like, the damage-wise, it's a net neutral, I would say, in terms of damage because you get 1 additional companion. If we're running Shepherds on our necklace, that's 45% additional damage, plus we get 50% already. So we're at the 100%. The attack speed's whatever because we get plenty from Storm's Companion. That only actually affected our Wolves. It wasn't affecting our Ravens. So it's pretty irrelevant that we lose that attack speed. But we gain this passive effect of Ravens, Wolves, and Poison Creeper. So what that means is we do not have to have all 3 of these on our bar because inside of the passive effect says you gain 5 Ravens or you gain 3 Wolves. So if we always have that, we're always going to have our 3 Wolves, our 5 Ravens, our 5 Ravens, and then our 3 Poison Creepers. Yes, that's going to be the number we have now of companions, which also is interesting because I think it makes a compelling argument that Shepherd should actually be on our 2-hander now, just because since we are getting 3 additional companions, we actually only start off 20% less damage on our Wolves, and then once we proc the 3 Wolves from Moonrage, we actually go up to 300%. So overall, all of our companion skills will have more damage if you're doing a Zootrupa type of style, which I think could potentially be good. But that's super good because now we actually have flexibility in our build. We do not have to run all 3 companion skills all the time to benefit from Shepherds. We just have to, we can run whichever ones we want, and we can focus on whichever ones we want. Now, going back to what I said about Wild Rage. So, Wild Rage, if they keep it where it gives us double the bonus, we're pretty much locked into using all of the same legendaries that we used before. Which sucks because we won't be able to use Stormcrow aspect, which I'll show you this one right here. Our Ravens finally got a legendary aspect. So Ravens now deal lightning damage, which is increased by 30 to 50% multiplicatively. Ravens active deals its full damage in half the time, and enemies inside of it are stunned. This is actually pretty solid. So if they were to change Wild Rage to where it's like okay, we don't have to run this, where it's more of like a situational or something like that type item, we could actually start running Stormcrow's aspect. We could start running Wolves, and then we could start running Ravens, because since they actually have an aspect that is scaling their damage further, I honestly want to say we might see a situation where Ravens ends up doing more damage than Poison Creeper does. And because we can increase its size, and because enemies inside of it are stunned, we have this offensive-defensive aspect. It's kind of like if you remember with the Lightning Spear Sork, if any of you have watched the build of that, all these lightning spears are stunning everything, right? It's a similar concept where it's like the best defense is a good offense, right? So if we're putting all this stuff, if we're constantly putting Ravens down, because I reset virtually every time I press basic or core skill, I reset my companion CDs, right? That's how much you know, like how many times you'll be able to put ravens down. And if we put the 99% size increase on ravens, it's going to have a massive radius. And notice it says enemies inside it are stunned. So that means that they're going to be stunned for as long as they are inside of ravens. There's not a normal duration, and I think that's actually really, really good, because if you just keep putting ravens down, you should theoretically keep stunning them. But that's pretty cool. And also note the fact that it says they deal lightning damage. This is also going to be very important. And to explain this, I need to come back up here, and I need to go to the glyphs now. Sorry. Let's see here. Paragon. Let me see. Okay, so glyphs. Glyphs are going to be crazy, 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 crazy. So, glyphs can now rank all the way up to level 100. This is really good. At level 45, a rare glyph can be upgraded to a legendary glyph using gem fragments with the following bonuses. The glyph's radius size will increase. So keep in mind, these glyphs' radius sizes are going to continually increase further than what they were increasing before. Instead of only having one radius increase, I believe we actually end up getting 2 or 3 radius increases. So that's a little nuts, okay? So like I said, the glyph's radius size has been increased from 4 to 5. The glyph gains an additional affix. So we're gonna see. It's like I don't know if we get 3. It might only be 2. I'd have to go re-look, but I know we're getting at least 1 additional glyph size increase. So you're going to be able to get even more stats on each of your glyphs, and they're going to get a multiplicative damage bonus on the glyph. So for example, I do not know what Wilds is going to do, but I would imagine it's going to say gain multiplicative companion damage once we hit 46, which means our companions damage is going to be scaling really, really high. Honestly, like very, very, very high. But because of that, I think Ravens is going to end up doing a ton of damage. And I think Poison Creeper is going to fall slightly behind Ravens, simply for the fact that we don't really have a specific Poison Creeper damage increasing legendary. So I think the fact that we're getting an additional 50% on Ravens is going to actually push it a little bit ahead. And the fact that it's going to stun everything might end up making it a really, really solid option for us to use, because we're going to get poison through rabies. We can get poison in all kinds of ways. We don't have to use Poison Creeper to get poisons. Now that being said, because of these glyphs, Druid might honestly end up becoming a lot stronger as well. Like, I mean, honestly, obviously the power level of companions is going to be up, but really there's going to be a lot of ways to run this, and I'll be able to give you guys a much better answer on what I really think is the best next Wednesday, because that's when the PTR is coming out. Because, I mean, it's going to be nuts, right? All right, and then also for the companion boards, you actually can only choose up to 5 boards now. So you're going to end up, it's going to be more of a system where, and we're also going to be getting 75 more points. So we're going to end up filling out each of the boards that we choose, more so than just trying to get as many glyph slots as possible. You're only going to be able to have up to 5 glyphs. And they were also wanting to make it to where, you know, the legendary nodes are wanting to be used, but I'm going to be honest with you, I still am not sure if that's going to fix them, because there's just some legendary nodes that are bad, i.e., you know, don't even, you know, I'm looking at you constricting tendrils. So that's going to be interesting. And then the companion board, let me just go back down here to Druid. Okay, so let's see, did it show? That's the 5 new passives. Oh, hold on. Oh, all right here. Okay, and I believe it should show the Paragon board. Okay, so here's the new Paragon board for Companion Druid. Casting a companion skill grants +4 ranks to all companion skills for 5 seconds. This is not really that crazy for Wolves, because Wolves has Storm's Companion, which, by the way, if you didn't know, gives +18 ranks to Wolves when you have it masterworked, now that they actually finally fixed the bug. So it's not that big of a deal for Wolves, because you have so many ranks already, you get a diminishing return on how much it's really increasing the damage. But for Ravens and Poison Creeper, this is actually really good, because they don't have as many ranks as, you know, what... They're not going to have as many ranks as what Wolves does, so this actually is going to turn out to be a decent damage increase. You know, for Poison Creeper and Ravens, this will be like a 20% damage increase, whereas for Wolves, it might come out to be like a 10 to 12% damage increase. So that's pretty cool. Notice that they also put things like Companion cooldown reduction in there, Companion damage reduction from elites. So they have some really cool stuff in here. We also are going to have access to a resist all in here. We're going to have some max life nodes. And I'm kind of curious to see how far the glyph radius is going to be, is because like how many things are we going to be able to get like a bonus from rare nodes or something from with those kind of glyphs. Not only that, I also wonder too if I'm hoping it does this. Obviously, I don't know if it will, but I really would like to see this Stormcrow's aspect make Ravens a nature magic skill or even a storm skill. I think that would be super duper sweet. I don't know if they're going to end up doing that. It doesn't say here that they're now a storm skill, but I think, you know, having access to that kind of flexibility would be pretty nice, because then you could use things like, God, I forget what it's called. There's one that I think just increases your lightning damage to enemies, so that'll be pretty interesting. And I will say this too, since we can only choose 5 glyphs, it really will be super interesting to see like what all of the glyphs do at level 46, because we don't actually know that yet. We'll know that once we actually get into the PTR. You know, like what are we going to use? I know we're going to use wilds. That's a staple, right? But then what if Bane becomes really good? What if Tracker becomes really good? Because think about this, right? So Tracker increases the duration of poison of your poisons. So if they were to make the multiplicative boost a boost to the duration of your poisons, that could potentially really make a just solo poison creeper build where you use that Mythic Uber unique pretty darn good. You could run that Mythic Uber unique, and then on top of that, you could run Andariel's. I mean, granted, I guess you would lose 8 ranks to Poison Creeper, but Andariel's is like super duper strong, so I don't know. But yeah, so, and when it comes to the whole ranks thing, speaking of ranks to the helmet, I think that means that if you were to play Zoo Druid and you were to do the like +6 to companion skills, which I think is the max, it's like +6 or 7 that you could get. So like 6 +4, 10, 15. I mean, you're talking, yeah, like 15 ranks to your Poison Creeper and your Ravens now, and then you also have that Rune Word that gives another 3. So if you don't have anything else to use, you could throw that on there too, and you could get even more ranks to your companion skills. So that is pretty darn interesting. Okay, another change they made though that I need to go over is in the tempering recipes. It's not going to be here. I'm going to have to go down further. Okay, right here. Okay, so Druid. Another thing too, Debilitating Roar now gives you a 15% multiplicative damage buff for its duration. So that's actually pretty interesting for that. That might make it a little more interesting to run. Cataclysm Changes doesn't really matter. Where is it at? Okay, yeah, so now I need to get into the Quick Shift, the Bestial Rampage changes, and then Wildart Hunger and all that stuff. But first I'm going to go over these temperings. So we're going to end up losing our companion damage on our rings and amulet and our gloves because they changed the companion finesse into companion augments. They made it better though. So % chance for wolves to deal double damage, % chance for Poison Creeper to deal double damage. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of unfortunate because this is a massive thing. Like, a chance for something to deal double damage is pretty massive. The other thing, too, here that I'm also wondering is, does this only happen on skill activations? Because if they do double damage on a skill activation, you're talking... So right now, my active is actually hitting for hundreds of millions of damage. So, like, you're talking about... I honestly think the Wolf active... Now, they're going to be doing a number squish, so we're not going to see, like, a billion, but, like, theoretically, if we were using the current number system and these changes went through, yes, your active could potentially be doing, like, 1 billion damage with wolves. Now, it wouldn't hit for 1 billion, but you have to remember that each wolf is doing damage. So, like, if I see, 5 or 6 wolves each hit for, like, 600 million, and then they're doing double that, well, all of a sudden you're doing, like, 1.2 billion or something like that. So... yeah, keep that in mind. That's just a lot of damage, for the wolves to be dealing. Same thing with Poison Creeper, same thing with Ravens. I'm just curious if it's just going to be on the active or what, but I mean, obviously we're going to end up going the wolf one. That's going to end up being the best, but if you are doing a Poison Creeper build, hey, you have a chance to deal double damage, and then think about this. You also have a chance for Bane to make it deal double damage. So I'm kind of curious, how do those interact if both of them go off at once? Do you get quad damage? I have no idea. But yeah, we are going to be losing the additive damage. That's really not a big deal. And the reason I say that is because if they can finally just fix Thunderstruck, because I know that it is supposed to be working with wolves. It's just not. If they do fix that, that gives us easy access to just run damage to close or damage to distant, so we can increase the damage. Because if you know, cross your fingers, if somehow it made ravens a storm skill, right? And then all of a sudden your wolves and your ravens were both benefiting from Thunderstruck, like, that would be pretty darn sweet. But that's pretty much going to be the option there. And even if they don't, we'll just end up augmenting critical strike damage or something like that onto our rings. It really isn't that big of a deal. And plus, Druid scales with critical strike damage pretty well, because with our Spirit Boon passive, we can get like 40% extra critical strike damage. So that right there already is pretty solid. And Ravens actually does crit. It's not like a typical damage over time effect. So the only thing that wouldn't benefit from it is Poison Creeper, which again is another kind of ding for Poison Creeper. However, I really do think that a solid, and even this season, I think there's potential for an okay Poison Creeper build. But next season, with that Mythic Uber, I really think a Poison Creeper build will be very interesting. Okay, so now people are probably wondering, are we still going to be a quick shift build? And the answer is honestly yes. But this is probably the change that I dislike the most that they've made this season. So sorry guys, I know that even though there was a bunch of good, there is still some bad. So when shape-shifting into a new animal form, you deal 18% damage. So they did nerf quick shift by 8%, but that's still super good. The bonus is lost after 3 seconds in human form. So now we have more strict management to where you pretty much have to be weaving an ability, like a shape-shifting ability, in between every single skill cast for your companions. Otherwise, you're going to run the risk of losing your quick shift, which really sucks. Same thing with heightened senses. We're going to become kind of this weaving class where it's going to be Raven's Claw, Poison Creeper, Pulverize. Like, you're constantly just going to be going back and forth, and weaving in abilities in between. Otherwise, you're going to lose these bonuses. And the thing is these bonuses are just too good to lose. I will say this, though. And the reason why I say this is an issue, because some of you might have noticed, we go back up here, that we got some new passives, and one of them is pretty good. So your companion, you deal 5, 10, 15% more damage while in human form. This is good for companions, because when we cast a companion skill, we actually go into human form. So you could say, well, we could just run humanity instead of quick shift. Well, you're right, but we're probably going to end up running both, because you have to remember, we are going to have 10 extra skill points. So that means not only are we going to end up putting points into quick shift, we're probably also going to end up putting points into this. So this is just another 15% multiplicative damage buff for us. Now, I could be wrong about that. Who knows? Maybe some tech happens, but I don't know. And then you have this one, but there also is this one's kind of interesting. So you deal 3% increased damage while healthy. You deal 3% increased damage while above 100% movement speed. These bonuses can stack. I don't know how many ranks, because notice here it says 5, 10, 15, 5, 10, 15, but this one just says 3 and 6. So these aren't this isn't really that compelling to take if these don't change. But if it goes up to 3, 6, 9, right, and then you can get an 18% bonus, well then maybe there actually is something here, okay? Maybe, because we can get to above 100% movement speed. We can do that, right? So that means we could get 19% damage. So if we didn't have enough skill points and we had to make the choice between Feral Aptitude and Quick Shift, we could take Feral Aptitude and not have to do that, right? Now, moving right back down to where we were. Oh, geez. Bestial Rampage, we're not going to be using this anymore. Even if they kept Wild Rage the same, this isn't ever going to be worth it for a Companion Druid build anymore. So if they don't change Wild Rage because they just don't know what to change it to yet, that's fine. We can just run Stormcrow's Aspect. But we're definitely never running Bestial Rampage again. So rejoice about that. Okay, that is a bonus, though. This is truly a good thing that we do not have to use Bestial Rampage, because that is taking away some of the Quick Shift. Because at least with Quick Shift, we get it immediately. We don't have to wait for 2 seconds. We don't have to do this awkward staggering. We don't have to do that anymore. We don't, right? But I will say this, they did change it. I think they got rid of this. So it says for 2 seconds. Now it just says when shapeshifting, Werebear grants 30% increased damage and Werewolf grants 20% attack speed. These bonuses persist as long as you're in either form. So they did make it to where you don't have to wait anymore. But honestly, I still love the one with nature first. But in the fact that this isn't a thing, we don't have to do this anymore, is lovely. Okay, so moving right along, Wildart Hunger. We did see kind of a nerf to this, and I'm kind of curious. It says shape-shifting into a new animal form increases the value of your bestial rampage bonuses by 2 to 5% up to 20 to 50%. This bonus decays by 2% per second. So I don't know if we're going to end up running Wildart Hunger anymore, and the reason for that is because it's going to be very, very hard, I think, for us to keep this up. I mean, I might be wrong about that, but it says the bonus decays by 2% per second. I guess we probably still could, because it says it increases it by 5%. So like you'd have to have a good rolled one. As long as this doesn't scale with the bonus here, I guess we could still use it. Because if we're getting 5% every time we shapeshift and we lose 2% a second, which we're gonna lose 2 to 4% whenever we go to cast a companion skill, depending on how fast we are. I'll have to test that, but the potential for us to not be running Wildart Hunger is there. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because guess what? If we're not running Bestial Rampage and we're not running Wildart Hunger, while I do think Quick Shift, we should still run it, it might not be as important anymore, because it's like, all right, we do this, you know, because we'd be essentially changing our whole build to being this, you know, shape-shifting style for what? Right, just for an 18% damage bonus. So that's going to be, you know, that is something to be thinking about going forward with Companion Druid. But I don't know, personally, I still think taking Pulverize, taking a core skill is good, because, you know, you want ancestral guidance and stuff like that. I think that's fine. It gives you a nice little damage boost, but we'll see what ends up happening, because even if we were to lose the Wildart Hunger, which we may not, even if we were to lose that, it's not that big of a deal, you know, like it's not that big of a deal, because we're gaining so much in other places. The question's really just going to be, you know, how much are we gaining compared to other classes? Because I think right now, if we were to lose Wildart Hunger, it actually doesn't matter. If we lose Wildart Hunger, it doesn't matter. We can also hold on to Quick Shift. So when you think about it compared to other classes, because when we're looking at these changes, right, I want you to notice that no other build has been changed, really. Companion Druid is getting a net buff right now, whereas other builds are staying the same. So if they're going to increase in power, it's going to be because of the general changes that everybody is benefiting from, right? So there's a potential for Companion Druid to, in relation to other Druid builds, go up a little bit. Right now, Companion Druid is definitely one of the top builds for Druid. Landslide, I think the Stormslide right now ended up coming out on top of everything, right, by a very large margin. So I don't know if it's going to be as good as that build next season still. I couldn't tell you that, because, you know, who knows? Like, it's Landslide or that Stormslide build so far ahead of the other top Druid builds. But if you're talking about it in relation to like Boulder or Windshear, which are builds that are actually they're all very close in power this season. I mean, these are probably going to get ahead of that builds, and it could potentially make Companion Druid like the second best build. And again, we don't even know, because once we see what the actual glyphs do, who knows what's going to happen. There could be other builds that end up somehow getting like some crazy buff just because a certain glyph has like a super broken passive, you know. But yeah, so, and for example, the Barbarian is going to benefit from the Spirit glyph, so the one that gives crit damage that I believe every class has. It's going to give a multiplicative crit buff, so when you think about the fact they can get Grandfather, and then they can also use Lochran's Talisman. Granted, we could use Lochran's Talisman too, but they have more weapons, so they actually have the slots to be able to run that. Then they could be getting like numerous like critical strike damage, multiplicative critical strike damage buffs. So Barbarian's looking pretty strong personally, I think, with these changes, but that's neither here nor there. I'm trying to think if there's any other changes here that I missed. I don't think I missed everything. That should be all the changes going on with Companion Druid right now. I mean, yeah, they did change these boards around a little bit, but I mean, it's whatever. Like, because like they took like potion healing, they turned it into resist all, which is good because I think potion healing and life per second's bad. And they also gave it max life, so it'd be easier to hit our resistances. Oh, yes, I know the last thing that I need to talk about. Here. Okay, hold on. Let me go to Torments. Okay, so I need to show you guys this. So now we are going to have an armor penalty, and we're going to have a bigger all resist penalty. So our boards are going to change a little bit in order to compensate to the fact that we need to get this much extra all resist, and the 1000 armor, we're also going to compensate for that. But to be honest with you, that's not a big deal, because we're like, the version that I was running already was running like Tyrael's Might. So when you have Tyrael's Might, you have like 1000 extra armor just because you literally don't need your ring slots. Like, you just don't. You put armor on your helmet, you put like an armor temper roll on it, and then you don't even need the, like, you literally have no value out of your ring slots. So now you actually will be getting value out of the ring slots. So when you run Tyrael's, you'll be able to hit this and this very, very easily, because I think I'm like at least, I don't know, 45, 90%. Man, I will say this though, if you don't have a Tyrael's Might, I think this is going to be a very hard number to hit. I'll have to see obviously next week, but because when I think about it, when I have Tyrael's Might on and it says that I'm 45% away typically from max all resistance. So even with Tyrael's Might, like, man, you know, this could, for those of you that don't care for the current Paragon board system, believe it or not, this is probably a good change. And then the new Paragon system changes are actually very good for you as well. Because since we can only use 5 Paragon boards and we know that we need all this all resist, your choices in the Paragon board are going to become much more simplified. It's just going to be, okay, path to the glyph slot, path to my legendary slot, and then get as much all resistant armor as I can. Do I have as much all resistant armor as I need? Okay, just look for max life slots. Like, legit, that's all Paragon's going to be. Like, that's going to be the formula. It's not going to be anything crazy because we're not going to be able to do, like, we're going to be much more limited to 5 Paragon boards. And that's also including your starting board. They said that's 5 Paragon boards including your starting board. So really, we're only getting 4 Paragon boards. And remember, there's builds that are using almost all of them, right? Like, I think even in the Companion Druid build, hold on, I can pull it up here real fast. I think even my Companion Druid build, I'm using quite a few of them. So let's see here. Pull this over here. So if we're looking at like what I was doing, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm gonna lose a whole board here, and I'm gonna have to make a decision on what to do, right? Not only that, you look at something like, let's just go over here to tier list. Let's look at the Lightning Spear sort, because this one's gonna get really, really toasted. So look at this. Look at this, right? 1, 2, or yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It uses 8 Paragon boards. 3 of these are going to be gone. And the reason for this is that people are just going and trying to get glyph slots. So what they're trying to do is force people into actually taking the legendary nodes, which people will do, because taking a legendary node should typically be better than taking any other node on the board. Just even though they're like bad, but like taking a legendary node compared to getting another glyph slot, typically getting the glyph slots better. So yeah, so that's going to be interesting. So who knows what's going to happen. So that probably is a good thing for Companion Druid though, because, you know, as I was showing you guys, where is it? Where the heck did I put? Oh, I just exited. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. So that's just a little wild, right? That is just a little wild. All right, but I think that's gonna do it though. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else? I don't think I have anything else really to say about it. These are really all the changes to the Companion Druid, etc. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.